I was a private chef to the rich and famous for a decade. No one ever asked me to make that. Yikes. Hi, and welcome to Cooking 100-Year-Old Recipes. In this video, I am examining the Christmas menu in this book from 1897. I have already prepared two of the items prior to filming this video, so if you want to go back and see them, they are the two right before this. And I'm doing another one right after. I'm a little bit behind on filming because there was a freeze here and, you know, Christmas stuff that goes on, but I really do want to still explore the topic. These are kind of timeless, informational type of videos or video content, and hopefully you will enjoy it as much as I enjoy doing them. So let's see what was on the menu, or suggested to be on a kind of a typical menu in 1897. Cookbooks are definitely reflective of the time, what's available, what people like to eat, and then on special occasion menus like Christmas and Thanksgiving, you're going to see what is a special treat or reserved or for special occasions, what's a luxury item. And what I kind of have pulled out of this menu to recognize what is special that might seem unusual to our modern eyes. It might surprise you, because it certainly surprised me. So let's see what we're eating for Christmas in 1897. The first item on the menu is consommé, and this is not some simple broth you sip on when you have the sniffles. It's a well-flavored, clear soup enriched with beef, veal, and chicken, along with onion, carrot, celery, and turnip, and of course plenty of herbs. There are additional seasonings like peppercorns, cloves, thyme, marjoram, and parsley. The collagen the bones release during this nearly 5-hour simmering process would give the clear soup a nicely rich mouthfeel. There are other types of consommé for which this basic broth is the base of. Consommé à la royale is served with a royal custard, and that's a savory custard enriched with the consommé and cut into shapes like stars. Or perhaps the d'Orleans served with quenelles and French peas. Now, on the subject of collagen, the next item I have my eye on for a Victorian Christmas is a molded jelly. You may be familiar with the ornate jelly molds made of copper. Perhaps one of your parents, grandparents, still has one of these in their kitchen today. The Victorians loved jellies. They were not the colorful jello molds you may know today, but rather exquisitely prepared savory and sweet molds with color and texture glistening on a candlelit table. Diners would delight when the jelly was presented to them. And while you do not see jelly on this list, it is an item served with one of the dishes on the menu that I will be preparing for you in the next video. I'm excited to make it. The recipe sounds delicious for it, and I think it will complement the dish wonderfully. Now let me draw your attention to the vegetables on this Christmas menu. Vegetables can be an afterthought to some of us. Maybe many of us. I happen to love vegetables. The vegetables on this menu are celery and creamed lima beans. Let me explain to you why this is a bit shocking if you're not already in shock. All the years I was a private chef to the rich and famous, none of them requested either of these. If you think about when you go to a restaurant, you have options of what is available to be made as a component of your meal. Generally, it's a nice variety, but that is nothing, not even a drop, compared to what it's like to have a private chef in your home. When these clients have the means, the world is their menu. Absolutely anything they could want that is available anywhere in the world can be had, and I would prepare it in their kitchen Not once did anyone ask me for celery or lima beans. Now, celery I discovered in the Thanksgiving menu video and why that would have been served on special occasions. Celery was hard to grow, and farmers didn't quite get the trick of it at that time. Some crops were still new to this new world, and celery certainly was one of them. We see this in the bananas in the Chicken Stanley video, and when I recorded it, I did not realize bananas were a luxury item at the time. And the lemons in the lemon pie video. Now, while they were growing just fine when Columbus brought them over to St. Augustine, there was a big freeze and it wiped out the lemon crops, the commercial lemon crops in Florida. And for an entire generation, no other commercial farmers attempted to grow them again. So lemons in particular were not rare because they were hard to grow. It's just that they had been wiped out. So lima beans fall into this category of going through a tumultuous time around the time this book was published. I imagine when you clicked on this video, you did not expect to hear a whole conversation or discussion, as it may be, about lima beans. So let's look at what was going on in the 1890s time period with regard to lima beans. You may recognize the Burpee name. It's a seed company that is still active today, and it was founded by a young medical student named Atlee Burpee. He certainly enjoyed success breeding livestock. He had feedback from customers who wanted quality seeds for their farms. In this era, American seed companies relied on European breeders for most of their seed varieties. Now, from Atlee's research work and correspondence with his customers, he concluded that the European-bred seeds were incompatible with American soil and climate conditions. He was determined to rectify the situation, and he set about breeding vegetables in America well adapted for our American gardens. So we have this scientific approach to growing crops because of Atlee's medical background. This is a man of science. In 1888, Atlee purchased a farmstead of several hundred acres in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and he named it Ford Hook Farm. Within a few years, Ford Hook Farm was transformed into a world-famous showcase of experimental gardens that developed outstanding new varieties for American farmers and home gardeners. The farm served as the Burpee family home, an outdoor laboratory for horticultural innovation, and a magnet for visiting horticulturalists from around the world. By the 1890s, Burpee was a household name. And in 1915, the 200-page Burpee catalog was sent to 1 million American gardeners. Now let's talk about the lima beans specifically. Occasionally, Atlee found what he was looking for close to home, and this was the case of the first bush lima bean. Now, the bush refers to growing bush instead of a pole-growing bean. And he found this bush lima bean growing in the garden of a man named Asa Palmer in Chester, Pennsylvania in 1890. And until then, the beans had strictly been climbing plants, needing poles for support. After cutworms had wiped out the Palmer's bean patch one year, he was stacking his poles for winter, and he noticed one odd little plant. It was still growing just fine. It was definitely a bush rather than a climber, only a foot high, and it had 3 little pods, each containing one single bean. He planted those seeds the following season, and 2 of them grew into low bushes, bearing a very generous yield. He sold those seeds to Atlee Burpee, and by 1907, the bush lima bean, as we know it now, it had been developed. It got the name the Ford Hook. So exceptional are its eating qualities that it has remained a home gardener's favorite to this day. Lima bean aficionados speak of being Ford-hooked. I've seen Ford-hook lima beans in my grocer's freezer, so I know that they are around today. So when we look at this time period, the 1890s to 1907, that's when the cookbook was written. The lima beans were still in this, I don't want to say developmental stage, but they were not widespread and growing as vigorously as some of the other American crops. And that's why this would have been a special dish on the Christmas menu. Interestingly enough, I actually made the cream of lima bean soup from the book over Christmas weekend, or actually 2 days before, because that very cold front was coming through here and I wanted a warm, hearty option just in case what I had planned for Christmas dinner wasn't going to be a crowd pleaser due to the weather. So the lima beans in this book, any preparation they have, after trying that soup recipe that I absolutely fell in love with, I'm going to give them more chances because I was a lima bean disliker all of my life until I tried it as a soup. You may have noticed salted pecans on the menu. Pecan trees are the only nut tree native to North America, mainly Central and North America. Native tribes were likely the first to cultivate the pecan tree. They're not only a food source, but they were a trade item to early European settlers. History indicates the nut became so popular that soon early settlers were also planting the tree in orchards and sending them overseas. Early uses of the pecan saw it pounded into a paste with a mortar. It could be dried and used as a nut flour, or more often was added to soups and stews. The native population would make it into what we think of as a trendy nut milk. They made a fermented milk drink called palcoacora. The tree spread to Louisiana and up the eastern seaboard. In Louisiana, the food was quickly incorporated into Creole food, where it remains a staple today. And in the 1800s, the technique of grafting was perfected, which resulted in easier propagation of trees and quicker crops. Pecan trees can take up to a decade to produce nuts, but grafted trees could produce in just a few years. I want to briefly touch on the two dishes that I already prepared from the menu and why I chose them. So we see roast goose on the menu and potato stuffing, which I had never heard of. So I decided to make that. And that's a mashed potato and bread stuffing flavored with salt pork and sage. It is delicious. I did not make it with goose because I cannot get a goose where I live. So I made a weeknight version with roasted chicken thighs. And you can see that 2 videos ago, I believe, from this one. And the other one was one of the desserts that was unusual from the Thanksgiving menu, which is this frozen pudding. And it's essentially a homemade ice cream base with some sort of liquor-soaked dried fruit mix. And the fruit stays very soft and moist because of the alcohol while it is frozen. And I absolutely loved that as well. It's definitely an adult dessert. So that is all for the Christmas recipes on the Victorian menu. And I hope to see you again in the new year. And stay tuned because I have one more menu item video coming next week. Thanks for watching.